Mr. Pond Boss, tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Hello everybody, Bob Lusk, the Pond Boss, checking in. We made it home. 2 weeks on the road. Spent a little time in the Great Lakes. Somewhere I've got a copy of Pond Boss magazine on my desk. I'm looking for it. You guys know the drill. Hashtag Pond Boss magazine in the comment section. Click like. Share this to your timeline. You're eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat and whatever else Leanne comes up with. So let me know who's watching. Let me check in with me. We got 5 viewers. And I thought I'd start off by talking about this heat dome. You think it's July. You know, we were, Debbie and I spent a couple of weeks in the Great Lakes area. We got to go up to Sister Bay, Wisconsin. I think I said it right. Wisconsin. Hello, Mark Hicks. Good to see you, buddy. You got it. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine. Click like. Share this to your timeline. You're eligible for drawing for a hat. Maybe even something else. Hello, Virgil Meyer, my good friend from Iowa. Danny Mack. Danny Mack is hanging out with us tonight. Hello, Ron Krisman. We got to hang out with Ron last week. We talked about him a little bit last week. Here's John Dyer checking in from Carolinas. Danny Mack is checking in from San Antonio. Hey, Trey Carpenter. Yo, buddy. Trey's down in Burnett, which is one of the areas that was devastated by the flood earlier this month. So what I thought I'd start off with, and you guys hit me with some questions. I got several topics I want to cover. One of them is the heat dome. So what does a heat dome do? You know, a heat dome is basically a high-pressure system that parks itself on top of someplace and doesn't allow the low-pressure systems to come in and alter the temperature. So it's kind of like a great big bowl sitting on top of you, and it goes all the way up to the Great Lakes right now. Hello, Michael Eric. Tim Cook. I love me some Tim Cook checking in from down just north of San Antonio. Yep. Hey, there's Fred Bingaman checking in from St. Louis. Got to have dinner with Fred a couple of weeks ago at the beginning of our vacation. I love me some Fred Bingaman. I love some Tim Cook. Tim Cook is a premier ecologist, conservationist, bass angler, and he's the guy that stays on the back side of the spotlight. There's a bunch of guys like that, and he is outstanding. Sarah Parvin. Sarah, I'm going to talk about you in a minute, because the Slab Lab underwent a devastating issue where the perfect storm showed up, literally, and just wiped out what you have been doing. And I really want to hit that. And I want to hit that when we have more viewers. So right now we've got 13 viewers, and I'm hoping we'll get quite a few more. I'm hoping. And I know more people are going to watch this later, because it's kind of hard to, rein ourselves in at this time of day on a summer evening. But I'm going to talk about Sarah and her situation here in just a minute. So I'm talking about the heat dome. So in essence, what's going on is from where I live in Texas throughout the south, southeast, all the way up into the Great Lakes states, there's a high-pressure system perched on top of us that's causing some excessive heat in areas that aren't really used to it. You know, Ohio, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, you guys are going through some heat that in Missouri, even where Fred is. Well, hello, Steve Thorburn. Good to see you. John Henry, good to see you. You know, where this kind of heat can be a pretty serious issue for ponds. Now, for the most part, ponds can be resilient until we push them. When we start pushing a pond, the heat can be a great big enemy, or an enema. No, he didn't really say that out loud. But the heat can be a problem because the warmer the water gets, the faster its metabolism escalates. So as the water temperature goes up, the faster it goes through its biological processes, which influences its chemical processes. And the chemical process or the chemistry processes influence the biological processes. So all this stuff speeds up. And when that happens, water being the universal solvent, things that can dissolve into water will, things that can absorb into water will. But what happens, since water is the vehicle, water has a job to kind of figure out how to deal with, all the extra stuff that we dump into it or that shows up when it rains. The extra nutrients, the extra, pH spikes. So the heat dome makes things happen faster. So as pond managers, what we got to try to figure out is how do we mitigate that. I'm going to talk about Sarah here in a minute. I texted her just a little bit to let her know I was going to talk about her here just a little bit. And where I'm going is our ponds do the best they can to process the extra stuff that gets added to it, whether it's from runoff, we fertilize, we feed, whatever. Hello, Travis Walker. Glad you're watching for the first time. Brent Ruggieri. No one talks much about how much water you're going to lose in the heat with a curtain fountain. My pond is say here. So all right. Let me hit that really, really quick. Hello, John Funk. Bill Shrum, Scott Groom, Scott and Leah. So what typically happens, I'm going to hit Brent real quick with his question or his comment. It's depending on what part of the planet you are. So here's the way that works. The temperature and the humidity in the air is like a sponge. It's going to absorb as much water as it can based on the humidity level and based on the temperature. The hotter the temperature, the lower the humidity, the more the pond absorbs. Now, I've heard tales of ponds absorbing an inch or two of water a day. I've never seen that. The maximum evaporation rates that I have seen has been about half an inch a day. And that is a lot of water. I mean, when you start figuring out half an inch, 1 acre, 1 inch deep is 27,000 gallons. So think about that. Our ponds have an influence on the weather. Where I live in Texas, holy cow. We have 1.3 million ponds, and there's enough water in this state of Texas that it can influence cloud patterns. It can influence rainfall patterns. Hello, Aquadoc. I got to hang out with Aquadoc. Aquadoc, holy cow! I'm gonna do I'm gonna do a little commercial for Aquadoc. I got to hang out with John Wilson and Denise and holy cow, everybody there. Heath, Tim, Brian. Aquadoc has put together a heck of a company. It's a family-owned business based outside of Cleveland, Ohio. And now they have offices and a footprint in 7 states, but they have customers in 11 states. And they're growing at a pretty dadgum nice, manageable rate. So Aquadoc is outstanding. They've got a great business model. They got a great company. And I enjoyed hanging out with those guys. I got to speak a few words at their company picnic last Friday afternoon before I started heading back to Texas. And Aquadoc is the kind of company that we all aspire to create, those of us that are entrepreneur types. Yep, so let me see here. And Aquadoc, dude, y'all are kicking ass. I don't know who's checking in with the Aquadoc. I don't know if that's John or somebody else. John Henry, been reports of fish kills in my area all week. So far, mine are holding up, but I'm afraid it's coming. And the thing is, I'm going to take you through that. Okay, it's John with Aquadoc. John Wilson. I love me some John Wilson. John Wilson is building quite the company. He's building quite the vehicle. And the dude plays hockey and he plays baseball. John Wilson. Everybody wants to be John Wilson. All right, so we got some conversations going on with Sarah, and I'm going to tap into Sarah's situation here in just a second. Scott Grooms is asking, should we dial back the feeders during this extreme heat? I'm going to tell you yes, and the reason I'm going to tell you that is when the water temperature gets hot, fish's metabolism slows down. especially the warm water fish. Cool water fish. I mean, cool water fish don't like hot water. So, Scott, Leah, here's my answer to that question. Watch your fish eat. Now, this is kind of a twofold answer to a one-fold question. Should we dial back the feeders? It does no harm to dial back the feeders. If the fish are eating all the feed, that's a good thing. But, you know, if you're feeding them 10 pounds per acre per day, that's a little bit more than the water can actually begin to process. So keep in mind, if you're feeding AquaMax MVP, the conversion rate is 1.3 to 1. 1.3 pounds of feed gives you a pound of gain. That gives you 0.3 pounds of waste. The water has to process that waste. So if you're adding that, you know, multiplied by 10, that's what, 0.3? That's 3 pounds of waste per day in an acre of water. The water's got to freaking manage that. So I'm going to tell you it does no harm to cut the feed back right now. All right, and I really do want to tackle what happened to Sarah because I want to get a little philosophical. Hello, Deborah Corlew. We had 110 degree. Hey, there's Chris Blood, Texas Hunter Feeders. Chris, I was talking to them about more fisheries management. We need to be talking about that because they're primed and ready to begin to do more fisheries management. And I'm going to try to nudge him to do that. All right, I'm looking here. Brent Brugeri, my water was 91 degrees. That's pretty hot. 91 at the surface. It's probably going to be, you know, 83 or 84 way down deep. Hello, Todd Austin. John Henry, North Central Arkansas. Never had one, but had a fish kill. Lost about half. You know, how does he know he lost half? Hello, Chris Blood. Love you, buddy. All right, so I called Sarah a few days ago. I wanted to give her a few days. So for you guys that don't really know, Sarah Parvin and her dad, Dennis, have the Slab Lab over near Huntsville, Alabama. And their whole impetus is to try to break the state record. Oh, wait, no. The world record, bluegills. So their whole focus has been trying to grow the biggest bluegill on the planet. So I'm going to kind of set the stage. And Sarah, there's a lot of love being shown to you. And you know what? That's the right thing. People need to show some love for Sarah and Dennis. Dennis is Sarah's dad, and that guy, he's a pretty amazing human. I've talked to him on the phone a couple of times, and oh my gosh, he has had an amazing career. He's in his 70s. Sarah's a little bit concerned that she's not going to have enough time to grow some more big fish, but here's what I'm going to tell you. There's more time. What I told Sarah is, and it boils down to that. I'm going to get a little bit philosophical. I'm going to get a little bit biblical here because I want to share this because this has great value. You know, it's not often that people dig into their faith and do it publicly. I'm going to do that tonight, just a touch. You know, people don't get real philosophical sometimes. I'm going to do that just a little bit, just a touch. So what I'm going to tell you is this. When you start looking in through the books of Genesis, you look into the New Testament, you listen to what Jesus had to say, and then you start kind of peeling back the layers of all this stuff. There's creation, then there's devastation, and then there's recreation. So when we kind of simplify it, you know, God brought Jesus to earth as God in the form of humans to go through the trials and tribulations, and then Jesus was killed by design. And then he was resurrected so that we could have a better life and we could have a vehicle to salvation. So now, let's just set the religious part aside. We're going to move that over to the side. When we start looking at the way nature works, so let's take a look. Let's just since I'm talking about Sarah's lake, the Slab Lab, that lake 6, 7, 8 acres. You know, she just had a devastating fish kill. I mean, it's gut wrenching, emotional, harsh harsh is a 4-letter word that doesn't even describe it. Oh wait, harsh is a 5-letter word. No, it's not. It's a 4-letter word. It was a devastating emotional punch in Dennis's and Sarah's gut. So now here's the aftermath. The fish die. Then what? Of course, we could raise the hood and try to figure out what caused the fish to die. Okay, so what? Now what? What's next? Right? So let's just go back to the book of Genesis. The Nile River turned to blood because Pharaoh wasn't listening to what Moses was trying to tell him and saying, hey, dude, you let my people go. We need to go. We're the chosen people. So Pharaoh didn't listen, so God turned the Nile River into blood. So what happens when the river turns to blood? Everything in it dies. Well, Sarah's water turned to blood. Everything died. Then what happened next? All the plagues. So when we're talking about ponds and pond management, and you have a devastating fish kill, the water quality goes south. And that's what happened to Sarah. They had a 4 or 5 inch rain, flowing water into a pretty stable lake that was being pushed to its maximum with nutrients, pH was such and such, alkalinity was such and such. You get a 4.5 inch rain that flows a gigantic amount of water into that lake, drastically changes the chemistry of it. Immediately there's a pushback. And in this case, the pushback was the chemistry changed so fast that the fish couldn't make that adjustment, and they died. Even our grass shrimp died, which grass shrimp are indicator species. I'd expect them to die. Well, as devastating as that is, let's kind of turn the page on this a little bit. If those of you that know about Sarah and what she's been doing with her dad Dennis, is they took a lake that was formerly a bass lake, and an overcrowded bass lake, to be specific. They decided they wanted to turn that into a lake where they could do everything they could to grow the biggest bluegill on the planet. So when you take a cucumber and you put it into vinegar, it turns into a pickle. Kind of a weak analogy, but what happened was Sarah and the folks around her decided they were going to unpickle that pickle. So they started culling bass. They had crappie. So it's what can we do to grow the biggest bluegill on the planet? So they started doing all the different husbandry things. They managed the water quality. They've had a few marginal fish kills in the past, and the mission was to try to grow bluegill, as huge as they can. Well, the last 2 or 3 years they've been on the cusp. They've been on the cusp. They've been on the edge. They've been close. But what's been happening to them is there's been so many other factors that influence their opportunity, think about that, and their ability to grow those giant bluegills. It's been predator fish. It's been competition among species. It's been water chemistry. It's been management strategy, trying to do some kind of a dance around all these other fish. Well, now the slate has been washed clean, so to speak. So they have a brand new Nile River, and even the Nile River, the blood washed downstream. So what's going to happen next? And when you dig into the book of Genesis, you're going to see that all these different plagues that happened, the insects, the frogs. Think about that from a pond management strategy. When the fishery of a pond dies, all the fish are gone, then all this is temporary. It's fleeting. Then the water begins to cleanse itself and get back to normal, get back to happy. I call it happy water. You guys have heard that. So the water begins to get happy again. Then what's the next thing to happen? Insects begin to grow. Mosquitoes, dragonfly nymphs, mayflies, damselflies. And then as that happens, frogs show up. And if you guys are tracking with me through the book of Genesis, insects, frogs. So as that happens, the stage is being set for that pond or that lake to cleanse itself, where you can do some pretty dynamic, fun things. So and Sarah's having to go through the emotions, and Sarah, there's a lot of love for you out there. And what Sarah's having to go through is the emotions of the devastation, but what's going to happen next is she's going to be excited because she's going to have a brand new slate with a brand new opportunity, which, when that happens, it's stunning how fast it can happen. When I talked to Sarah the other day, she was a little bit worried about, oh my gosh, I don't know how much time we've got. Well, Sarah, as you begin to design your plan, I'm going to tell you this about all you guys that have gone through this, or if you haven't, you probably will. Now the stage is set for you to begin to design the strategy, blessed by God, to where you can have something that can happen so fast, it'll be stunning. I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to move on to other topics. I'm going to say this. Sarah Parvin, you can't see it yet. Well, maybe you can. The opportunity is about to unveil itself that you're going to have the best chance you've had up to this point to grow that state record, world record bluegill. You're going to have the chance to do that because you've had so many things that have not given you the opportunity because of the competition, because of the dynamics of those fisheries, because of the genetics, or whatever it is. You're getting ready to have the chance in the next 4 to 5 years. And it's only going to take 4 years. 4 to 5 years, you're going to have the shot at breaking that state record. And I don't know how long you've been at it, but I know it's been longer than that. The next 4 to 5 years, your lake, given the right opportunity, the right management, cleansing the water with the right kind of habitat, the right kind of food chain, the right genetics, the right harvest plan, which you've got all that in place. That's all in place. You are going to have the best chance in the next 4 to 5 years to break that record that you've been at for quite a while. So, like Forrest Gump said, that's about all I got to say about that. So I want all you guys to encourage Sarah. And Sarah, I'm pretty excited for you. When I called Sarah, I told her about what happened to my wife, Debbie. And I don't want to get deeply personal on this, but man, maybe I do. I don't know. Debbie and I got married in 2002 in December. Then during spring break of 2003, we bought a house. We remodeled it, made it just like she wanted it. Fast forward 18 months, that house burned down. And Debbie lost a son, tragically, in 2000. All of his belongings were in that house. Oh my gosh, you could not, talking about devastating, it was horrible. Well, then we got to, Mike Otto sent his son-in-law over with a front end loader and scraped the slab clean. We had an engineer come on and to the site and said, you know what, you can do whatever you want. So my wife was able to build on the same footprint the house of her dreams. And it was amazing, that place. And a bunch of you guys that are watching the show, Danny Mack, you've been there. Several of you guys have been there. And it was a dadgum amazing place. Well, Sarah, that's what's getting ready to happen to you. So your Slab Lab, you're going to scrape the slab clean. Whew, what an opportunity to do a little visual there. You're going to scrape the slab clean, and you're going to build the house of your dreams. And I'm pretty fired up. I can't wait to see how that works out for you. So, we're praying, we're excited, and we cannot wait to see how that works. All right, now I'm going to kind of circle back and go through some questions here. There's my philosophy and faith and religion for the night. It's 7:55. Let's do a commercial. Chris Blood. Hey, Chris, I'm going to go to that bass seminar at the American Fisheries Society August 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, dude, and I would absolutely love to hang out with you. So I think I'm going to be staying on the Riverwalk. I don't think Debbie's coming. I got a room. But I'm going to go to all those different seminars. There's like 3 days worth. And I'm pretty fired up about attending that. But they're not all day, every day. So, I would love to hang out with you guys at Texas Hunter. Oh, Texas Hunter. Let's talk about them. Texas Hunter products. I love Texas Hunter products. I highly recommend them to you guys. Not only are their products great, they got great fish feeders. They've got, hunting blinds. They've got wildlife products. They got fish habitat products. Spend a little bit of time at TexasHunterProducts.com and take a look. Of course, I love Purina Mills. They irritate the crap out of me sometimes with their business model, but you're not going to find any feeds that are any better than they are. So take a look at Purina Mills. AquaMax MVP, that's one of my favorite feeds. 9 different pellet sizes. Good stuff. Easy Docks of Texas. I haven't seen David Schneiderman tonight, but he's usually checking in. Oh, I've got to promote myself, says Debbie, says Leanne. The Bob Lusk Institute of Higher Pondology is coming up October 23, 24, 25. We're going to have 2.5 days of some pretty intense, fun learning about lake management. If you got a lake management company, you want to learn more about managing your lakes and ponds. Bill Shrum's been there. Danny Mack's been there. Chris Blood, you probably need to come to this one because you need to make a spiel about Texas Hunter products. And I'm not going to charge you an arm and a leg for sponsorship, just an arm. So, here's the fun part of the deal. This is the exciting part. We're going to spend 2.5 days. In the better part of 1 day, we're going to go over east of Ardmore, Oklahoma, and we're going to evaluate Jimmy Houston's lakes. I called Jimmy about 6 or 8 weeks ago and said, hey, I'm going to have the Institute of Higher Pondology coming up in October. We'd love to come over there and electrofish your lakes and analyze them and come up with a report. He said, man, I love that. He said, my lakes haven't been electrofished in probably 5 years, so you guys come on. I'm pretty sure he'll be there, but like any celebrity, maybe he will, maybe he won't. If he gets a gig, he's going to take it. But every time I've been to his place, he's been there. So, and here's the deal on that. It's $1,500. You're going to hang out with me. We're going to go hang out at Jimmy Houston's lakes. I expect him to be there, but I'm not going to make that promise. And we're going to evaluate his lakes, and you're going to have a great curriculum, which includes, that $1,500 includes housing, food, and Debbie's going to make sure you have a pretty cool shirt, hats. We're going to have books. Otto's going to come. He'll speak about lake building. We'll probably have a couple of other celebrities come and talk about pond management. I'd love it if Chris Blood would show up, but I'm not going to squeeze him on this show, so we'll see. And plus, we got like 4 years worth of data on Bobby and Jacob West Lake, which is the 15-acre lake. So we're going to do that at the West Haven Ranch. And the first 8 people that sign up, we got 4 people so far that have signed up. The first 8 people that sign up and pay, you got a spot at the ranch for $1,500. Now, everybody after that, we got room for 20. After that, I've set aside some rooms about 15 to 18 miles away in 2 little towns. So, you guys let me know what you want to do. Also, take a look at birddogit.com. That's my son Jonathan's business. He's got a hunting business. He's also got a ranch management and farm management model that he's working on. And I'm pretty proud of that guy. He's kicking butt. All right, so we got a whole bunch of questions stacking up. Let me back up here. All right. Bill Schrum, we got to go bale hay. I don't believe it. Yeah, Sarah, we're going to do Jimmy Houston's lake. That'd be kind of cool if you could come if you want to. We'd love to help. Love for you to be there. All right, I'm going to back up here. I'm missing a whole bunch of stuff. All right, let me see here. Holy cow, I'm behind. Jeez. Hold up, y'all bear with me. Jim Allen, he's hanging out in the Adirondacks. I love the Adirondacks. That's great. Holy cow, you guys hang on. Ooh, got a whole lot of stuff going on. Bear with me here. I got to back up and look at all this stuff. All right, John Henry says, in the fish kill, is it possible the minnows survive? Never only lost about half his catfish. Yeah, it's possible for the minnows to survive. And it's really tough to judge how many fish you've lost, you know, because there's always attrition. So how do you know how many? You know, it's tough. It's tough to figure that out. All right, let me see. I'm scrolling down. Come on down. Yeah, Chris, okay. Chris, I will holler at you, and we'll figure that out, because I'd love to hang out with you. Okay, so Jeb Kaufman, Chase Butcher. This is the guy are you telling him about me? Jeb? Thanks, dude. Okay, so John Henry, fish kill possibly. Okay, we go. Was Sarah's 100%? Sarah's kill had to be close to 100%. If it's not, I hope it was. Because if it's 100% fish kill, then she gets to start over from scratch. And when you start over from scratch, you're not trying to undo something that nature left undone. Whoa. Write that down. Hello, Jim Norquist. Dave Weber, so you're saying 1 4.5-inch rain killed all the fish? So okay, Dave Weber, here, yeah, I'm gonna slap you around on that. 1 4.5-inch rain in that watershed with that temperature at that time, on top of that water chemistry, was enough water flowing into that lake to triple the volume of water, which was enough to change the chemistry dramatically, exponentially, and quickly enough to cause the fish to die. So yes, that's what happened to her. Danny Mack says, how long did it take for Richmond Mills to grow their big bluegills? Well, so this is kind of fun. This is really kind of fun. Oh, I love Brent's question about the aerator stopping. Okay. Oh, dude, that is such a great question. We're going to peel back the layers of that onion. Let me hit Danny Max. So how long did it take for Richmond Mills to grow their big bluegills? So let me tell you about Richmond Mill Lake over near Laurel Hill, North Carolina. So that lake flows 6,000, 10,000 gallons of water per minute over the spillway. pH 5.3. The water is the same color as iced tea. Well, that water is stable 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It never changes. It's just crappy water. But it's like 0.2 of a point of pH high enough that they'll reproduce. If the water was 5.1 or 5.0, they couldn't reproduce. So it took about 6 or 7 years for Richmond Mills bluegills to knock beyond 2 pounds. That was about year 5 where Jim Morgan sent me a picture of a 2-pound, 4-ounce bluegill. And oh my gosh, my heart rate escalated. He had no idea what that meant. It was huge. No idea what that meant. And over the span of the time that I managed that lake, which was about 10 years, the biggest bluegill caught, there were 2 of them caught, there were 3 pounds and 4 ounces. And I'm confident there were some bigger bluegill than that. But here's the catch. You know, bluegill live 6 to 8 years. So here's what I'm trying to encourage Sarah is to know that now with refreshed water that's going to process itself, cleanse itself with aeration, nutrients are going to go away differently. They're going to, some of them are going to migrate downstream. she's going to have the opportunity to have some control over the numbers, total control over the genetics, control over the opportunity. And you fast forward about 4 years, there's going to be bluegill well beyond 2 pounds in that lake. That's going to happen. When I turn 75 years old, she's going to have some 2.5 pound bluegills. I'm 70. Do I look 70? Who cares? All right, so Brent, why didn't the aerator stop it from happening? I thought it was all about keeping your water stirred up, no layers. Well, all right, so let's do this. That is a great question. Actually, Brent, that is a stellar question, because we all believe that when you keep your aeration going, you keep your water stirred up, it gives you some autonomous water chemistry top to bottom. Well, let's do this. Let's say, let me think of the best way to explain this. Let's say that your water, and I'm going to get a little out there on this. Let's say your water is tomato soup. You keep it stirred up. The tomato soup is exactly like it should be. It's perfect. Then you get the rain, and the rain comes in as Jim Beam whiskey. The Jim Beam bourbon goes into that tomato soup, completely changes the chemistry. You can aerate that tomato soup all day long, but the minute that Jim Beam hits it, bam, the fish are drunk. And I don't mean to make fun of that, but there's the analogy. So the aerators did what they could possibly do by keeping the water autonomous, keeping it aerated, keeping it stable. But when you get that rainfall coming off of a rocky hillside watershed, and it comes in and completely changes the chemistry of that water from what it is to what it will be, that's what caused her problem. And there's not one thing she could have done about that. Not one thing. Now, here's the catch-22 about that. Sarah had been working feverishly for years to make that water as healthy and happy as it could be. Now, the water's influenced by the nutrient input. It's influenced by the local soils, the local minerals, the local metals. And when you get that giant amount of rainfall at the wrong time of the year, if that had happened in March or April, wouldn't have been that big a deal. It had a different chemistry, different pH, different nutrition load, a different nutrient load, different mineral load. But it happened at the wrong time of year, at the wrong temperature, and it knocked them out. John Harson, dude, go get somebody to tuck you in. Yep, so Dave, so Sarah's telling you right there, years of pushing the limits was the match. Yep. So when you get that rain, that's what triggered this. There's not a thing in the world. There's no way to prevent it. There's no aeration that would have stopped it. There's no amount of muriatic acid that would have altered it. There's no amount of limestone that would have changed it. That was imminent. And there's not a thing in the world that they could have done about it. So therein lies the rub. So now what I think is what's going to happen for Sarah and with Sarah and Dennis is they're going to be able to minimize. Okay, here it is. Here's the deal. Sarah, listen to this. I think you're going to be able to minimize the push. So what you were having to do is to push the lake to its limits to grow the fish you wanted to grow, because there were so many different size classes, so many different species competing for so much space and so much food, so much aeration. Now the opportunity. So guys, listen to this. Listen to this. Now she doesn't have to push the lake so hard to get the lake to be led where she wants it to go. She's not going to have to push the carrying capacity. She's not going to have to push the standing crop to get the sizes that she wants. Now, The rub is going to be, how do you manage the dynamics of that fishery? That's where it gets a little bit tedious and a little bit complicated. So what's going to happen next is she's going to have the opportunity to restock it with the best genetics, less food, less pushing the water chemistry, with a greater opportunity to grow a higher percentage of big bluegills faster. Now I want you guys to go back and replay this and listen to what I just said. Don't do it now. I got more to say, and y'all need to hear it. Debbie just looked at me and rolled her eyes like you're being too cocky. Sarah Parvin's got the chance to build her dream house. And I'm pretty fired up for her. John Dyer never realized how much tilapia would eat. They're like locusts, will affect the bluegill. It will affect, absolutely yes, it will affect the bluegill. It will increase their survival rates. It will increase their growth rates. You will see that. Tim Stewart, hey Timbo, checking in. Good to see you from South Florida. Yep, Sarah, you got to come if you can. Bye, Bill Shrum. Tim Stewart's been to the Institute of Higher Pondology. John Harson, am I a celebrity? Well, you are to me. Stephen Martin, I had a huge algae outbreak here in Andover, Kansas. I believe filamentous and a green sludge algae that's floating, congealing together. There's bass, koi, and perch in the pond. Also have 5 pet ducks. The deer drink out of it all the time. Getting an aeration system this weekend with 2 diffusers. What can I kill the algae with that won't hurt all the while? All right, dude, listen to me. All right, all you guys that are thinking about, Stephen, okay, listen to me. When you buy that aeration system, your startup plan is going to be the determining factor on what happens to your fishery. So at this time of year, when you put in an aeration system, if you do not do the startup right, you will kill every fish in there. I got a call from a guy in western central Missouri a couple of weeks ago, and he'd bought an aeration system online, installed it himself, did not follow the startup instructions, and started killing fish. And he called me and he wanted to debate me. Well, I didn't think I killed that many fish. Okay, well, how many you want to kill? You want to kill all of them, or just like 10%? You know, dude, you started it up wrong. So Stephen Martin, what I'm going to tell you is pay close attention to how you start up that aeration system. That's going to make a difference. And actually, if you start it up right, you're probably going to knock out some of that algae. Now keep in mind that the algae and other aquatic plants that you've got are growing there because they have the opportunity. When you begin to aerate that pond, the opportunity shifts. Because what you're doing now is you're adding aeration to the water, and you're not really adding oxygen to the water. Keep that in mind. When you are aerating a pond, you're actually moving the water so it can communicate with the atmosphere. When that happens, then the water does its magical stuff. So when you take all that water below the thermocline that is anoxic, toxic, full of ammonia, nitrites, nitrates, phosphorus, whatever, you're going to regurgitate, you're going to vomit that water to the surface. When you do that, you're going to change the chemistry of the surface water. So I'm going to implore you, where'd that word come from? To start up that aeration system intelligently. Don't let that system take out your fish. Okay, Jeff Wall and Bob, I had help from above Saturday after 5 inches of rain. Here comes my wife. What you got, baby? Oh, Lord, she gave me an evil eye. Think I might be in trouble. Am I in trouble? Oh, she just gave me that little number. She wants me to wrap up. She came and looked at this blue solo cup. She's pretty cute. Am I busted? Help me out here. Let me cover my back. Okay, Jeff Wallen. Bob, I had help from above Saturday after 5 inches of rain. An 8-foot log and 12-inch diameter got wedged in my 18-inch overflow. Tied a long climbing rope on it, hooked to the winch on my side-by-side, pulled and yanked. The log came out, tore my 45 off, but saved the dam. Tore my 45 off. Huh. Well, Jeff, I'm trying to interpret that. Tim Stewart, why would a large bass, 4.5 pounds, hang around the surface all afternoon? Aerators run at night. Surface temperature is just under 90, South Florida. Whew. Why would your 4.5 pound bass hang around the surface? Is it lonely? I don't know. Usually when a 4.5 pound bass hangs around the surface, something not happy, especially when it's 90 degrees. It doesn't want to be there. Brent Rutan from over at Waxahachie, Texas. He's looking at buying a place over here at Pecan Plantation where we live. I'd love to hang out with Brent Rutan and his wife. Okay, had water primrose invade my pond in Waxahachie, Texas for the first time this year. This is 11 minutes ago. Hope I'm not too late. I treated a reasonable portion and had a significant but not total fish kill. Guessing the thickness and density of the vegetation created an increase in oxygen depletion. Question now is whether to treat again. Do not treat it again. Blow it off for this year. Pray that it doesn't come back. Hit it earlier in the year next year, Brent. What is the likelihood that water primrose will return annually? 100%. One other contributing factor was that my aerators were off due to my surge protector going off. Unknown to me. They're back on now from... Woo! Okay, so that's another reason you could have had a fish kill. So if your aeration system was off more than 5 or 6 days, then you could have had an issue with that. All right, Jeremy Day, how about any Jeremy Day down in Magnolia area, Texas? Any ideas, Navasota? Any ideas to help grow out pond with water quality if it gets very little wind besides putting in? Yeah, exchange water. Pump some water out to the lake, pump some water in from the lake. So Sarah and Stephen Martin are talking back and forth. Okay, Stephen says, I remember you talking about the startup and couldn't remember the amount of time to run it at the startup. Okay, so here's the way I'm going to tell you that. Startup 15 minutes. If you're going to do it this time of year, run it for 15 minutes. Get down to wind. If you can smell something that smells like rotten eggs or musty or stinky smell, cut it off. 15 minutes. Then the next day, run it for 30 minutes. You're still going to smell that smell. Because here, let me explain that to you guys. So what happens is the water stratifies. It's like a layer cake this time of year. That's nature's way. So you've got this warm layer of water sitting on top of a cool layer of water. The middle of the layer is called the thermocline. The layer below the thermocline becomes completely devoid of oxygen. That layer is anoxic and it's toxic. If you try to mix those layers together, you're going to take that zero oxygen layer and mix it with the upper layer and push the oxygen levels down as you're pushing the toxic levels of gas up into the upper layers of the pond. That's what can kill fish. So run it for 10 or 15 minutes, then the second day double it, third day double it, but keep standing out there and smelling it. If you get a whiff of nasty, musty, rotten egg, stinky smell, shut it off. And then over a span of 7 or 8 days, you should get to the point where you don't smell anything. When you smell nothing, after 7 or 8 days, then you can run it. Now, when it's hot, like John Wilson's guys up in Ohio area, if the temperature is like it is right now in the 90s, you don't need to run that aeration system 24 hours a day. That's when it's a good idea to run it like from 9 o'clock at night till 9 in the morning. John Harson, run, Bob, while you can. I can't, dude. I'm kind of like incarcerated. For those of you who don't know, I sleep outside anyway. We have a screened-in back porch right out there, and I have a fan. It got down to 74 last night. It was pretty comfortable. Okay, so John Harsh and Sarah Parvin on the bright side. All the fish you took out, American sport fish got for stock. Your fish are still alive with them and can be restocked. Run, Bob. Scott Schilling. Scott, I had to be not more than 100 miles from your place, but I didn't call you because I was in a time crunch. I remember being at Jimmy's place a few years after the dam blew out. He was a cool, down-to-earth guy. Were you there with me? Did I take you there? I thought I did. Yep. All right. So I had a 45 degree on the overflow. Okay, there you go. Dave said, hey, Mongo. Mongo checking in from Brownstown, Illinois. Dave Sefton. He recently had over 10 inches overnight. You can't imagine what a mess. Roads washed, bridges missing, trees down. And yes, the ponds are now in mourning. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty harsh. Jeremy Day, would you exchange water once a month in summer? You know what? I do that as a preventative. So it's the fact that you've got a pretty big lake sitting right next to a hatchery pond, I think if you do exchange water once or twice a month, that'd be a smart thing. Yep. Temperature doesn't matter nearly as much as exchanging the water. John Arson says, I mean, you better run to bed with Debbie. I sleep outside. She sleeps inside. Yeah, I won't be in the porch in the heat. So what? I like it. It's pretty comfortable. I get to hear all the night sounds. All right, guys, you know what? Looks like we're kind of running out of juice here. So you guys keep throwing some encouraging words out there to Sarah. And Sarah, you know, this is my 46th year of doing this stuff. I've seen some horrific things. I've seen some fantastic things. The path is paved. Your road is set. You are getting ready to do something like you've never seen before. So I'm excited for you, and I know it's hard to see that. Yep. Holy cow, so all of a sudden now I get a flurry of things. Let me hit this. Yeah, I'm going to be in the porch in the heat. I love that. It's pretty fun. So Scott. Oh, Scott. Yeah, okay. Ooh, hold up. Things just flew crazy here. I don't know what that noise is for. Moderator. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. All right. Yep. Ken Ziegelbauer. Is there an insecticide for aquatic use? Something eating my lily pads. Small holes in the pads and they die. I see small black bugs on top. You know what? I have not paid much attention to insecticides. I'm sure there is, but I don't know what it is. I do not know. But I know this. I'm fixing to wrap up. Hey, there's Vito. Vito just put a light bulb up. He just sent 20-somethings. All right, guys, you know what? I'm going to wrap it up. And you guys keep sending us some love to Sarah because she is devastated by this. And it's only going to get better. Hello, Mark Dyer. Good to see you from Arkansas. Ron, you're happy. You're welcome. And got to hang out with Ron last week. I got to visit with that. So you know what? I'm going to wrap it up right here and call it a day. And it's 8:23 here in Texas. And you know what? I don't know where I'll be next week, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be hanging out with you guys somewhere. Tim Stewart's got one lounging at the surface, wants a suntan. You know, you got a weird bass. So I'm going to wrap it up right here, guys. So adios for now. We will see you next Tuesday. I hope, I expect.